Gust is one of the 4 elemental cantrips introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, along with Control Flames, Shape Water, and Mold Earth. While it completes the Avatar set of spells in a way that would make Aang happy, it's widely agreed that it's the least powerful of the bunch. With that disclaimer in mind, I'll cover a few ways to use Gust effectively. But for starters, let's quickly talk about how Gust works. Gust causes one of 3 effects: moving a medium or smaller creature who fails a strength save up to 5 feet away from you, pushing a 5-pound or lighter object up to 10 feet away from you, or creating a harmless gust of wind that's strong enough to slam shutters or rustle leaves or clothes or hair, etc. It has a 30-foot range, and unlike the other 3 elemental cantrips, it requires a verbal component and has no persistent effects that last up to an hour. All its effects are instantaneous and short-lived. With that out of the way, here are a few ways to use Gust in DnD 5e. Number 1. Push an enemy off a cliff. A 5-foot push isn't a whole lot, but if an enemy is right beside a ledge that tumbles down to a significant drop-off, you can cause some serious fall damage with Gust. Just be sure to size up your foe. A big bad barbarian chief or troll is much more likely to pass their save than a little goblin or kobold. Number 2. Push an enemy into hazardous terrain. This goes for persistent control effects like web or damage effects that trigger when an enemy enters them for the first time on a turn, like Spirit Guardians, Cloud of Daggers, Moonbeam, Spike Growth, etc. If these damage effects deal more damage than your other cantrip options, then Gust is actually the optimal choice. Not to mention that creatures will also take that damage when they start their turn in that area. Number 3. Push an enemy into your tank's reach. It might be really rare, but if an enemy is only 10 feet away from your party's tank, pushing them into melee range is a really good idea. Now, that enemy can't run toward your backline without suffering an opportunity attack, which increases the odds that they'll stay put and attack your party's beefiest member instead, which is exactly what you want. Number 4. Push an ally to safety. This is the inverse of the previous tip. Pushing an enemy out of melee range of an enemy means that they won't suffer an opportunity attack because their movement was forced rather than voluntary. Assuming they go before the enemy, or enemies, in the initiative order, they can now run away scot-free. The more enemies they're able to run from, the more valuable this trick becomes. One caveat for this one. Rules as written, you can't fail a saving throw by choice, even if you want to. Although Jeremy Crawford has said that he'd allow it as long as you're not incapacitated or dominated, and in my experience, most DMs feel the same way. Especially for something decidedly not overpowered, like using Gust to push your buddy 5 feet. Tip number 5 is in the same vein, and that's to push an ally out of a restrain or grapple effect. Restrain effects are usually localized, and grapples always end if the grappler is out of reach of the grappled creature. So, like the previous tip, it can be handy to push your ally into safety, provided your DM allows for automatic voluntary failed saves. Or if your DM doesn't allow you to fail a save on purpose, pushing an enemy out of grapple range of your buddy works too. Number 6. Trigger traps from a distance. Pushing small objects around the room onto pressure plates and the like can be a safe way to trigger traps without putting yourself in danger. However, the 5-pound weight limit of the spell means that this won't always work, unless you can push multiple smaller objects into the same space. Number 7. Test possibly illusory or trapped objects. This is similar to the previous tip, but just for testing out your environment from a safe distance. Sure, something like Mage Hand works better for this, it's a better cantrip after all, but Gust works in a pinch. Number 8. Push a disarmed item away from an enemy. This one's pretty niche, but if your allies disarm an enemy with something like Heat Metal or a Battle Master's disarming attack, you can follow up with Gust to knock that item away from the creature, provided it weighs under 5 pounds. Number 9. Close a door from a distance. Again, pretty niche, but it could come up in a vital situation or allow you to act like some sort of poltergeist and spook the room's occupants, especially if you're pairing it with some other effects like Minor Illusion or Silent Image. Number 10. Earn money during downtime. Like, say you're in a port city and it's a windless day. Fishermen might pay a premium for you to act as the ship's sailblower for the day. Or maybe you can charge to push a windmill or something. Yeah, I know, this is probably going over the 5-pound weight limit of Gust, but I mean, come on. Doing pseudo-manual labor for a few gold pieces isn't going to break your game. Number 11. Look magical. The third bullet point of Gust is all about just looking neat and proving your magical credentials. Kind of like thaumaturgy, prestidigitation, or druidcraft, but decidedly worse than any of those. Number 12. Make a distraction. Slamming doors, blowing leaves in an otherwise calm environment, gutting out small candles, these things can attract the attention of enemies, allowing your party to stealthily move past them as they come to investigate. In a similar vein, creating rustling noises in a silent environment might be able to give your party advantage on a stealth check by covering up the sounds of your movement, or kicking up dust to obscure a guard's view of your party as you cross an open area. Number 13. Prank someone, by blowing mud or dirt or some other gross thing all over them from a distance. Credit to a commenter for this idea and parts of the last one. Number 14. Blind an enemy. This one is contentious since the second level blindness deafness spell exists and a cantrip shouldn't really operate at the same power level, but many DMs allow anyone to attempt blowing sand in someone's eyes for a short-term benefit, and Gust just allows you to do this from a distance. For my 2 cents, it seems fair to give a target disadvantage on the next attack it makes if it fails a dexterity or constitution save, especially since other cantrips, Frostbite and Vicious Mockery, do this in addition to dealing damage. Number 15. Disperse fog, spores, poison gases, etc. Now, technically, Gust can't disperse Fog Cloud or Cloud Kill. Fog Cloud requires a wind of moderate or greater speed to be dispersed, and Cloud Kill lasts until strong wind disperses the fog. Gust creates a small blast of air, which isn't sufficient for dispersing either spell. Furthermore, Gust of Wind, a second level spell, explicitly states that it disperses gas or vapor, and many DMs and players feel that a cantrip shouldn't have powers equivalent to a second level spell. All that being said, Fog Cloud states that it only requires a wind of at least 10 miles per hour to be dispersed, and seeing as Gust can push a medium creature, like a full-grown human, it's certainly creating a burst of wind greater than 10 miles per hour. While we're here, it's also strange that Gust can only push a 5-pound object, while it has no trouble pushing a 200+ pound creature, albeit half the distance. Ultimately, this one's up to your DM, but a common compromise I've seen is allowing Gust to disperse a 5-foot cube of fog rather than the entire area, which seems fair to me. And for regular, non-magical areas of fog, or poisonous spores emitted from mushrooms, or a vent that's pouring out some toxic gas, stuff like that, I think there's no harm in allowing Gust to have its moment to shine. With all those uses covered, let's answer the most important question. Is Gust a good spell? In my opinion, no. Gust is not a good spell. It basically boils down to a long-distance shove action that forces a strength save rather than relying on athletics/acrobatics contests. Which, to be fair, does make it superior to the shove action for a spellcaster. But unlike shove, it can't knock a creature prone, only away. If it could knock a creature prone like the shove action, it would be a whole lot more attractive. In any case, you'll almost always be better served by using a straight-up damage cantrip in combat instead of Gust. Only infrequently will an enemy be standing 5 feet from a deadly ledge or hazardous terrain. However, when those situations do arise, Gust can be a satisfying spell that scratches the itch of players who love to problem solve. Outside of combat, Gust gets beat out by pretty much every other utility cantrip. Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, Thaumaturgy, Light, Mage Hand, and all the other elemental cantrips just have more situations where they're useful than you'll ever find for Gust. But anyway, do you guys have any other ideas for using Gust that I missed? Stories about using it in your own games? Ideas to make it slightly better? Let me know in the comments. This is DnD Lounge, wishing you the best of luck in your next spellcasting venture.